Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror sci-fi show where things can get totally radical. Now today, I will be welcoming one of the greatest horror sci-fi composers and sound designers in the history of the genres, Alan Howarth. The man just has an incredible resume of films that he's worked on: Star Trek The Motion Picture, Galaxina, Escape from New York, John Carpenter's The Thing, Christina, and so many others. I mean, he's had an amazing career, and I'm having him on the show today to talk about all that stuff. And it's going to be tremendous, beyond tremendous, extraordinary, extraordinary beyond extraordinary. So, here is my interview with Alan Howarth.
Hey, Tommy.
Welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
All right.
Nice. Well, it's such an honor. Thank you for taking the time today, finally.
Yeah, we got it going here.
Yes. So, going back in time, did you gravitate toward music early on?
Actually, my early thing was I was going to be a painter artist kid. So I was always an artist. The drawing, imaging stuff was stuff I had access to. You got crayons and scissors and colored paper and glue, you know.
Yeah.
But the other little parallel was that my dad had a little accordion that was up in the attic. And so at around age 5 or 6, I pestered Mom to get me accordion lessons. And she did. And my teacher was a local sort of country western TV star character that gave lessons in his basement, and I started to get my pom 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 little thing going.
Yeah.
And I was, for this one lesson, I finally got 2 hands going, and she took me to the lesson, and I went down. I sat in the guy's basement, and I'm kind of pom 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 pom, no teacher.
So accordion was your first instrument?
Yeah, let me finish. So then my mother comes in and goes, "We're leaving," and yanks me out of there. And that was the end of the accordion lessons. And years later, I found out that the accordion teacher had put the moves on my mom.
Oh.
So that killed my music lessons. So again, continued to be Mr. Art student. Like the 3rd grade, 4th grade, when they start school bands, the little letter comes home and says, "Your son has shown, musical talent. You should think about, renting an instrument." I was like, "Rent instruments." And so I looked at the band, and there was no guitars and no pianos. The only cool instrument in the band was the saxophone. So I became an alto saxophone kid, and that was really where it started.
Accordion, saxophone. How many instruments do you play overall, though?
Well, now it's boiled down to computers and keyboards and guitars, But certainly wind instruments. I have a little, Yamaha WS11, which is a MIDI wind instrument, so I can still use my wind instrument chops to input MIDI to a sample of something or a keyboard. And so I'm a much better wind instrument player than my keyboard player, but the keyboard was always in the background. And in high school, the real big change up was again being Mr. Art class. I was the president of art class. This girl Kathy at one point approaches me and says, "Hey, my boyfriend Dave has a band, and they got a gig for a sock hop at this local girls' Catholic school, and we wanted to know if you wanted to sit in with the band, and play." So I went and played my saxophone in red charts, like dance band music, that kind of stuff. And at the end of 3 hours, we packed up, and Dave looked at me and says, "Here you go." And he handed me $80, and my eyes went wide. Yeah, Art, I'm going for music. This is money. So that was the beginnings, and then Dave went on to have a band, and they needed a bass player, and I pestered my mom for a bass guitar. I got a little Supertone amp, and hurried up and learned how to play bass. I became a bass player in rock bands, and that was really where when I started becoming, quote, a professional. So like as a junior in high school, I was already making $300 a week. I was styling. I bought a car and everything.
Yeah, it's the big time. Yeah, get girls and all that.
Yeah, exactly. And this was all in the Cleveland, Ohio area.
Yeah. Did you have eclectic tastes in music growing up?
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. I remember writing a paper in high school again on, I was into all this abstract, Yoshiszewski and Stockhausen and all these guys, and they were making music out of tape art, where they were splicing stuff together. It was making like, cash registers and door closes and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I remember writing a paper postulating that this was still music. This was music, all this abstract stuff. So I was definitely out there.
Yeah. Do you remember the first album you ever bought?
Good one. Yeah, probably something along the lines of the Everly. Oh no, it was big band music.
Big
Ben
band.
Miller, and then the Everly Brothers was the other side of it that got me. And another part of that journey, I remember in my bedroom I shared with my brother Mark. I got the top bunk and I put this little shelf up in the corner there, and I put a radio there.
Mm-hmm.
And at night I used to listen to Cousin Brucey on the all-night radio, and just listen to all that stuff, instead of going to sleep.
Yeah.
So I was definitely raised on all that stuff, and all this stuff was in northern New Jersey and East Brunswick, actually. So I'm a Jersey kid and then an Ohio kid.
Mm-hmm. And how about the first concert you attended?
Oh, big one. First concert. That was the most amazing first concert ever. I actually saw the Beatles at Shea Stadium.
Oh, really?
Off the charts. Beatlemania. Kids screaming. Oh, man. That was it. I was in from then on. It was over.
My mom saw them at the Hollywood Bowl in 1964, and she got their autographs backstage, and
wow.
My uncle threw them away.
Of course. Useless.
Yeah.
I remember my wife making me sell a John Lennon autograph picture. Those drawings he had at a yard sale. That's stupid. Get rid of that John Lennon thing.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. You got to see the Beatles, like, right in their prime. Yeah. Wow.
Right at the birth of Beatlemania, yeah. So I was on board from then on.
And I was reading that when you were playing in the local rock bands, you guys got to open for both the Who and Cream. Yeah.
We at that time, the band was called Silk. The album was called Pure Silk. We were produced by Bill Simzik. At the time, also produced Joe Walsh and the James Gang. So it was the James Gang and the Silk.
The Eagles.
The bands being farmed in the area, and then Simzik went on to produce the Eagles, and that's how Joe found his way over to the Eagles eventually. But we opened for the Who on the Tommy tour, opened for the Cream, Wheels of Fire. My hair was down the middle of my back. I weighed like 60 pounds less than I do now. I was a good-looking rock star candidate kid. It was wild though to actually meet those people. I remember, especially with the Who, you open for the Who, and the first time you don't know anything. This was like in Ohio University, and we're in the gym, and we play, and go off the stage, and the Who goes up and they play, and go, wow, that's amazing. But then the next night they go play it, and wow, that's amazing. And I realized, wow, this is world-class rock and roll. They do this every night for packed houses. This is a whole big notch up from playing in bars,
Yeah.
And that was really where my musical career grew up big time.
Yeah, so they were all really cool guys?
Really good guys. This is Keith Moon and Ed Whistle, and the nicest one was Roger Daltrey. Tom was a little standoffish because he had just whatever his personality, but they were all accessible. I remember by the third show, I'm up there playing, and now here they are standing off stage, looking, watching us play. Checking out the up and coming kids. And that was like a big moment, also.
Yeah, did they invite you guys to go party with them?
No, they weren't into partying. Eventually, I wound up at a party with Moon, but this was like a couple years later in Cleveland. I went backstage when they played in the Cleveland Auditorium, and then wound up going to a local bar called the Agora Ballroom, and they were there to hang out. because that was the scene at the time. So that was the only party. But actually, for during the show, they were professionals. I mean, they drank a lot of alcohol. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Like a lot of those bands did.
But that was just like water to those guys.
Yeah. So what year did you move to L.A.?
So relocation to L.A. First L.A. experience was 1972. I didn't really live here, but I came here on my first youth quest to go to the big time. Mm-hmm. Moved out here, played in a band with this old rock and roll player, Gene Vincent.
Oh, yeah.
And the keyboard player was Daryl Dragon, the guy who became Captain in Tennille. Mm-hmm. And that was my first experience. Then went back to Cleveland for another part. And then another event, sort of 74-ish. I'm in Cleveland. I have an original band. We're playing in a thing called the Smiling Dog Saloon. The band was called Braino. I was like the Pink Floyd of Cleveland at that point. We were already quadraphonic. I had echoes and Leslies and oscillators and all this other stuff. Mm-hmm. And this jazz band, Weather Report, comes through and plays in this club. So the club was booking jazz acts in the middle of the week, catching them from going to New York to Chicago. We used our sound system for Weather Report, and our sound man, fellow named Brian Wisner, was, we did the whole number on it. We gave them the full echo job and everything, and that night they said, wow, I'd like to go on the road with this. And I had a job at the time, so Brian left with Weather Report. About 2 years later, he came back and says, hey, Alan, we're doing this big album promotion. This was like heavy weather. And he said, why don't you go out on the road with us and you take care of all of Joe's keyboards? Because by now the keyboard rigs were getting to be like the Rick Wakeman time, where there was like 4 or 5, 6 synthesizers. They needed service constantly. So that brought me to L.A. So that was about 76, and then 78. By then I moved, and I was in L.A. because of the Weather Report. Mm-hmm. And then a couple of years later, Weather Report went into a long studio period, and I was kind of like hanging out. And at the time, I was working for ARP, the synthesizer company, as a local rep representing synths in music stores. And the most unlikely person to get you a career upgrade is this big burly buddy, again from Cleveland, named Pat, like an old biker character. And he's working at Paramount, and they're doing, he's just in there doing copies of tapes. He's in a transfer bay. But these two sound effects editors, Richard Anderson and Steve Flick, are having a conversation about how they need somebody who knows about synthesizers for this movie. And he turns around and goes, oh, man, you got to talk to my buddy Alan, man. Yeah. Where's the Weather Report? And they look at him and go, Weather Report? Is that the one at 7 o'clock or 11 o'clock? They're thinking, Weather Report, television. Yeah. He goes, no, here. And he gave my number. And so, because the door was open, I got a call from Richard, and he says, hey, your friend Pat says, about synthesizers, come and talk to us. I go down, and they're looking for a sound design person, we'll call it, at the time, just sound effects, creator, for Star Trek the Motion Picture. So I made him an audition tape of Warp, Enterprise going from a Warp 1 to Warp 7, and that sound became part of the Enterprise sound, and it became a whole new legacy. I was in the movie business in Star Trek.
Wow, that's a huge deal to be a part of that. To be a part
so I did Star Trek 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because I was, until they went to Next Generation, I was a regular player because I had the sound of the Enterprise and the transporters and all the space hardware. The stuff you couldn't record with a microphone. You had to make it up in gear.
Yeah.
And the next connection, the picture editor from Star Trek, a fellow named Todd Ramsey, his next assignment was Escape from New York. And originally I got on as a sound effects person, but I, hanging out with Todd, and I gave him tapes of my music and stuff like that. And at the time, John kind of like the door swung open, and John was looking for maybe somebody else to work on music with. So he introduced me to John Carpenter. Carpenter came over to my little dining room studio in Glendale and sat there for a couple hours. And at the end of that meeting, he said, "Oh yeah, let's do it." So my first film score was Escape from New York.
Wow!
Boom, boom. So within I'll say a year of winding up in the movie business, I had gotten like 2 home runs right out of the gate. I had a whole career of Star Treks and John Carpenter movies in the 80s. It was like the 2 pillars. If I wasn't on one, I was on the other. Yeah,
I like that music in Escape from New York a lot. I think it was very groundbreaking for its time.
Yeah, exactly. And you could hear music Carpenter's music. I mean, he's a musician. His father was a concert violin and a music instructor in Kentucky, and he knew what he was doing. But in addition to his musical talent, he wanted to be a film director. So, hence somebody that makes movies and writes his own music. And he enjoys it. He always used to say that doing the music for his movies was like vacation.
Yeah.
He could come over to my studio and hang out, turn off the phone, and just enjoy making music and not worry about the budget or the schedule or who was doing what. And here he is. Now he's being a 2019 rock star guy. He's got a band with his two sons and going on tour, playing all that music that we came up with in the 80s. It's all a revival now.
Yeah, I love the fact that he's doing all that, going and performing on stage and stuff. I missed him making movies, though. I think he got kind of, disillusioned by the business side of it. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, the two big tragedies were The Thing.
Yeah.
Because he knew he made it the finest monster movie ever, and the marketing people had a conflict. At the same time, The Thing came out at Universal, also came out at E.T. And they didn't know what to do with it. And the world was always embracing E.T. I mean, it was on the cover of Life magazine and all that stuff. So they kind of pulled it. And he was crushed because he knew he had hit a home run. And meanwhile, it was like game over. In fact, he also talking about Christine. He said, "Why'd you do Christine?" He says, "I needed a job. Nobody would hire me because I had directed a flop."
Yeah.
And then here we are back when we finally got the VHS and home video. People rediscovered The Thing, and now today, which movie would you want to watch, The Thing or E.T.? Well, you're going to watch The Thing.
Oh, yeah.
Your movie. And then the second time this happened to him was Big Trouble in Little China. Similar but different story. Back to the marketing. He made Big Trouble. The marketing people at 20th Century Fox that were all on board got fired 2 weeks before the movie came out. So the new guys couldn't have the old guys' movie be successful. So the movie went out again, and then they kind of wrote it off as a flop, and it disappeared. And now, I see Big Trouble playing on cable all the time.
Mm-hmm. All great movies.
So that sent him to the position where he only wanted to do a movie if it was totally under his control. All his deals after that were, look, give me the money, and leave me alone.
Yeah.
So he the Prince of Darkness and They Live and Mouth of Madness were out of that first three picture deal. And then he just kind of went to a long period of I don't know, man. It was weird. So
yeah, I mean,
and I think if you ask him now to do another movie, he'd say I would need a lot of money because I don't want to work that hard. Everybody's got to be hired.
I know. He
has touched in with the Halloween franchise. Him and the boys are doing the score. Did last year. They got another one this year, and I think there's another one coming out next year. So there'll be three current Halloweens. And you can't kill Michael Myers. That's the trick. So
yeah.
Always have another one.
He did The Ward in 2010.
Yeah, and that was a gun for hire. That was somebody else's production. They hired him to do it. He was in, made his movie, and left, and it wasn't a hit, even though he was fantastic. But he's much bigger in Europe than he is in America.
Yeah, which is sad.
They recognize what a great filmmaker is there much more.
Yeah, which is sad.
The art of it. But as a young filmmaker, if you're trying to look for a model, a pioneering guy in your own thing, the Carpenter model is pretty much the only way to go.
Mm-hmm.
Make your own movie. If you're going to just follow the machine and crank out what they want, you'll just be doing gigs. You'll never cut any pioneering ground.
Mm-hmm.
It's a business. It's a different business now. It's really run by attorneys and accountants.
Yeah.
In the movie business.
Yeah, the movie business is weird now.
Yeah, I mean, when you do a movie at Disney, you shoot 2 or 3 endings, and it goes to committee over which ending is the one that the audience is going to want.
Yeah,
it's very, very strange.
Very strange. So I'm going to mention movies that you worked on as a composer or sound designer, and you tell me any stories that you remember. Galaxina.
Oh, Galaxina. Yeah, that was a weird one.
Yeah.
For those who never knew the movie, it had this one beautiful woman that was a Playboy bunny that turned actress.
Dorothy Stratton.
And Dorothy Stratton, and she was murdered later. But that was her one shot out there. there was some quirky science fiction stuff. So because I had done Star Trek, it was easy to get on board as a sound designer, and I was in again for the same kind of space hardware I did for Star Trek, but with a twist on it. And I remember doing some weird alien voices and stuff like that too. Making up nonsense stuff, languages into tape and playing it forwards, backwards, nectu, parado, liku, or crazy stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I remember doing that kind of stuff for that movie. But it was low budget. It was fun. I remember being in shock when that woman was murdered. It was what? But these people, strange lives. It's strange lives.
Yeah, William Sachs. I had him on the show last year. Very interesting guy. Nice guy, though.
Yeah, I remember the funniest part was there's one song that was in there where it goes Horny Patrol, Horno Patrol, Enio Port the Storm, Enio ho. It was very funny.
Yeah.
Stuff. It was satirical. It was satirical space sci-fi. I mean, in some ways, almost like a sort of a Dark Star kind of thing.
Yeah, with Barbarella a little thrown in.
Mm-hmm.
Battle Beyond the Stars.
Battle Beyond the Stars. Again, the Star Trek card was thrown on the table. I was introduced to the sound effects editor there, a fellow named Dave, and it's going to come to me in a second. We became buddies. I helped brought him over to the John Carpenter group, and he became the David Udall. That's what it is. So his first sort of upgrade to a union movie was Escape from New York. So Udall did the sound effects on Escape. But I remember getting introduced to James Horner, and that was his first score. And because I was, again, the Star Trek gets you around meeting these people. And so I met Horner there. He came over to the house. I played him some stuff, and he liked me. And I actually have one music cue in Battle Beyond the Stars, separate from the spaceships and the noises. There's one scene that's sort of the equivalent of the Star Wars bar scene. It was called Gelf's Chamber, and I actually have this kind of weird saxophone music thing that I made up for that one. Very interesting. And that was Roger Corman, so that was a whole introduction to the group of Roger Corman. And through that, I also then wound up on radar with Jim Wynorski.
Oh, yeah.
Did Lost Empire with him a little while later.
And Jim, he's a funny guy.
Yeah, very funny guy. He's sort of the Russ Meyer of the modern age. His forte is large breasts. So
yeah.
He has to have women with large breasts.
Yeah.
In fact, I coined a term for him. We did the soundtrack album Lost Empire, and I said this was another one of Jim's breastacular movies.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. Halloween 2.
Halloween 2. All right, so I'm finishing Escape from New York, and we're doing a mixes of some stuff for Escape from New York, and just casually during the mix, Carpenter, we're talking about what he's going to do next. Is I got this big movie I'm going to do called The Thing. Says I'm going to be really busy, but they want to make another Halloween, so you're going to do Halloween. It's like a little class assignment,
Yeah.
You do Halloween. So at that time, I took Halloween 1 score that was a 2-inch 16-track tape, and I transferred it to a 2-inch 24-track tape. So I had a bunch of open tracks, and so it's still John Carpenter there, but then I overdubbed on top of all the original Halloween, all my extra synth tracks. So I gave it a different sonic texture. I made it more gothic and dark.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a couple cues in there that were, outside of the normal Halloween palette of music, the famous theme and the Stalker and the Laurie theme.
Yeah.
And, when I went on to Halloween 4, 5, and 6, the producers just wanted more of that stuff. Give me that Halloween music. So I wanted to play in those themes seriously for 4 movies after Halloween 2. It was pretty wild. So no Carpenter. Rick Rosenthal was the director. They kind of left me alone to just crank it out. Deborah Hill was my main contact because she stuck around on the production to do it. So that sort of bound me a lot closer to Deborah because John was always in the front. But now with no John, I got to know Deborah. Actually, a very wonderful lady, although at the same time you don't want to be on her wrong side. She really knows how to chew out.
Yeah.
Things aren't going well.
That's a producer for you.
Yeah, exactly. She had both sides. I remember a couple of times getting phone messages. Remember that's when we had phone machines?
Yeah.
And I would have these phone messages from her that were pretty ugly.
Oh.
But they were motivating.
Yeah. Halloween.
God bless her soul.
Yeah, she was one of the great producers.
Absolutely.
Halloween 3.
Halloween 3. All right, so Halloween 3, Deborah and John have decided that if we're going to do more Halloweens, we're going to now break out of Michael Myers, and we're going to just do Halloween stories, which the idea that the more Halloween, each one would be another Halloween story in a different setting, and they try to do an anthology of Halloween movies. And so Halloween 3, Tommy Lee Wallace was the director. John was in the background, kind of watching over his shoulder, but it was really Tommy's baby.
Mm-hmm.
And so John still came by to do the score, and so it was a breakaway from Halloween. So I remember doing that first chase scene, we call it Chase Chalice, where the guys running around on the trailer in the parking lot. And the idea was to come up with something that was Halloween-ish, but it wasn't Halloween anymore. And I think that's one of the best pieces of music he and I ever did in that whole genre of those kinds of movies. It still holds up. We called it Cherries and the Pumpkins at the time. Mm-hmm. The whole opening really set the scene. And it wasn't called Halloween. If it was just called Season of the Witch,
yeah,
it would have done fine. But the fact it was supposed to be Halloween, at the end of it, they go, what happened to Michael Myers? And so the producers wanted to go back to Michael Myers, and Deborah and John go, if you want to do it, knock yourself out. And they just kind of stepped away. So when Halloween 4 came around, they were doing it, and Mustafa Akkad, the original producer, rang me up and said, hey, we want you to do the music for Halloween 4. So I remember sitting in the studio with John. We were working probably on Big Trouble at the time. I said, they want to do another Halloween. Is that okay with you? I wanted his permission. I wanted to think I was sneaking around his back and go, do what you want. It was just kind of done with those guys. So then I jumped on for Halloween 4, 5, and 6 as the composer for the Halloween sequels of that sort of three-pack movies.
Poltergeist.
Poltergeist. Back to Richard Anderson, Steve Flick, and now another guy very famous now, Mark Mangini. Ben Burt would pass that one over to the team at the time because he was Richard Anderson's buddy from USC on Poltergeist. And again, I'm a sound effects specialist. I'm not an editor. I'm not sitting cutting all the stuff. I'm creating sounds that I give to the editors to cut in.
Yeah.
And we're sitting in an editing room with Spielberg and Michael Kahn and Frank Marshall and the whole sound effects team, and we're spotting. We're going through the list of stuff to do, and it comes to the sound of the little girl's voice, Carol Ann, who at a certain point in the movie she's no longer there. We just hear her voice, and we knew we wanted to do something special to her. And Spielberg knew I was that guy. So I remember saying to Spielberg, "Hey man, what do you think about it?" He looks straight in my face. He goes, how about Earth to Venus? This is Steven Spielberg. You don't say, well, what the fuck is that? Oh, that's brilliant. Great. So I make a note. And I remember at the end of the session, I go out in the hallway and I start to sweat. I have no idea what he's talking about. And I now have direct orders from Steven Spielberg to put Earth to Venus on this girl's voice. And so, it's like, a couple weeks later, I'm in the studio trying all kinds of stuff. This was before any computer stuff. The only digital gear I had is I had an Eventide harmonizer. Mm-hmm. But putting her sound through that voice, it was digital. It didn't sound natural. It was processed. And I was stumped. And one time I'm driving in the car, taking some tapes into Paramount, and on the radio comes this Led Zeppelin to A Whole Lot of Love. Yep. And in the second break, there's this sort of this psychedelic area where there's this effect on Robert Plant's voice, which is like a pre-echo, like you need, I love my love. That's Earth to Venus. That was the inspiration. I had an idea. I went back to the studio and I took a recording of the little girl's voice and I put it on the tape recorder backwards and I played it into reverb and then put it, another pass, and I had this this 8-track tape recorder where you could vary the speed, so it wasn't just playing normal; it was going and I played that into the tape recorder to record this kind of this very speed reverb, and so now it had reverse reverb on it, which was something, reverse tapes, but all of a sudden effect on a voice. So this whole yummy. So when it was in the theater in Quad, there was a left side of backwards reverb, there was a right side. They were a little different. And then you would hear the real voice in the center channel, and then it would spill out into the surrounds at this other, forwards reverb. And they bought it. I became that guy. And it's interesting. I remember this last Star Wars movie when the girl and the young bad guy are communicating mentally. Mm-hmm. Exact same effect. That established how you do interdimensional voices was this reverse reverb effect. That's now an industry standard. You'll hear it every time. Very, very interesting. All from Led Zeppelin.
Wow. And did that lead to you working on Twilight Zone, the movie?
No, actually, I didn't work on Twilight Zone, the movie. No.
Oh,
I did, I remember.
IMDb posted it, so it's probably not true.
Well, I may have. Oh, I got over 100 movies. No, I probably was. You know what it is? I think they took some of my sound effects that I had created and used it on the movie, the sound effects editor, so they gave me credit for this effects because it was recycled stuff. But I didn't actually work directly on the show.
Oh, okay.
That's my dog, Savannah. All right. Okay.
Did you work on Sam Peckinpah's last movie, The Osterman Weekend?
I did, yeah. That was an interesting thing. So it was a Lalo Schifrin score. He had done his thing, and they were screening it, and they wanted something scarier. So they approached me to do sort of a touch-up scene on that score, and I scored like the last third of it with sort of Halloween-ish music. And so there's a certain point where it switches over to from Lalo's score to my score, and so you'll hear the change. It was about the time that Rutger Hauer winds up in the woods in the house kind of thing. Mm-hmm. That's what I wanted to switch over to, a sort of a alone in a house situation. And so that was interesting. And that was about the same time I was doing Jim Warnarski's Lost Empire. I remember those things going through the studio about the same time.
Did you get to see Sam Peckinpah's legendary, big personality?
No. In post-production, you're in after the movie's shot. So I was in at the tail end. So it's already in editing. I'm dealing with the editors and the producers. Those guys are off on their next thing already. So in every movie, there's pre-production, which is writing the script, casting, et cetera, et cetera. Production is when you take the crew out, you actually film the movie, and then you come around and it goes into editing. All those guys leave because, you want to save money. And then it goes to producer to finish it up. So never met the guy, although I knew a young woman who claimed to be one of his daughters. Her name was Sansu Peckinpah. Mm-hmm. And actually, I introduced her one time to John Carpenter, and he kind of skeptically rolled his eyes like, yeah, I bet you there's a bunch of yous out there.
Oh, man. How about Gremlins?
Gremlins was fun. That was, I got on that show because of my buddy Mark Mangini, again, another one of the original Star Trek crews. And so I was on for the little spaceships and the little gremlin noises. Mm-hmm. Again, people would come to me. There'd be somebody who was the sound supervisor, head of the department. And there's, anywhere from, 3 to 10 people on the project. And so I was the guy who supplied special sound effects. And that was because I was a, rock and roller musician guy, and I had the studio and the gear and knew how to do the effects. And again, being sort of a former Pink Floyder, all this stuff translated very, very easily for me for movie sound.
Yeah, that Jerry Goldsmith score, it's supposed to be kind of upbeat, but it's also very disturbing at the same time.
Yeah, he did well. Short version for Jerry Goldsmith's story, just as an injection. So first time I meet Jerry Goldsmith was on Star Trek 1. Remember he did the score, and I remember going to a recording session again because it was Star Trek and everything was behind schedule, and as a sound effects person, I was trying to catch up to what was the music going to be. So I went to this very elaborate orchestral Jerry Goldsmith scoring date, and the recording engineer was a fellow named Bruce Botnick, who I knew from doing Weather Report.
Yeah.
And he was an engineer on one of the Weather Report records, and he was the original recording engineer for the Doors, who was like, I was a big Doors guy.
He produced L.A. Woman. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I walk in the studio, and here's Bruce Bodden, my old buddy. So I was walking in there, and I just kind of remember looking around and watching it all go down, and Jerry's in the studio, and there's got another conductor up there, and it was like amazing. So here we are, Star Trek. I'm going to say 3. Did Jerry do the third one?
I think so.
Whichever one it was. But I remember getting the opportunity again with Bruce Bodnick. He knew me, doing in post, sitting in the studio with Jerry. He was doing some keyboard overdubs, just touching up the score. And I actually got to sit in a room with Jerry Goldsmith for 3 hours of just me and Bruce and him, and it was downtime and stuff like that. And I got to ask him all kinds of questions. So I remember saying, Jerry, where does all that stuff come from? Where's your treasure chest of ideas? And he says, Alan, for me, it was Gustav Mahler. He says, when you hear me do stuff, I'm just redoing Mahler. He was the guy.
Yeah.
Which is gold. I mean, that's gold to get it from the master. Where does the master get more master stuff from? You'll talk to Carpenter, he'll say, well, Peckinpah is my guy, and I like John Huston, and all this, people relate. And for anybody listening, the stuff you listen to is your fountain of where it's all going to come from when you go to do your own thing. I mean, we all climb on the shoulders of the great ones to get farther up the ladder. So don't ever lose track of all that stuff that you're attracted to. There's some resonance in there. Something means something to you that why you like it, and why you like it is why you should imitate it or take it in and make it your own, own it.
I agree.
There's a great line from Frank Zappa, and I think it was from he says, great artists don't plagiarize, they steal.
Yeah, I agree. The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai.
Oh, fun one. So that was an interesting show. Again, Mr. Special Sound Effects on that one. I remember going through the voice processing of, if you remember there was a certain alien thing, and John Lithgow and the other guys had this whole thing where they were, their names were John something, like John Bibute and John Big Booty and all this other stuff, and that was also Christopher Lloyd was in there as another character. And I remember processing all these alien voices for those guys. And I don't know what else, but it was interesting because that time the guy who was doing the score, Tony Michael Boddicker, who's now a good buddy, decades later, still another good guy. He was one of the major keyboard gods of the record business. He was one of the main guys for Quincy and all that stuff on the Michael Jackson stuff. Super guy.
Yeah, I love the electronic sounding score of that movie. I've heard so many people, emulated throughout the years. In fact, a couple weeks ago, I was talking to John Massari, and he told me he kind of was influenced by that score for this one that he did.
Mm-hmm.
And stuff. Yeah, it's a good score.
Yeah. The technology changes, but the ideas don't. It's just it renders in a different way. I mean, it's from practical special effects to CGI. Your CGI is imitating what was done with practical. I remember this whole thing Carpenter told me about The Thing, and how a guy, Rob Bottin, was hired to be the special effects guy. And Bottin sort of built himself the impossible house that he had to live in when he had the idea that the thing wasn't a thing, but it was like an infection. It would be hosted by anybody.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't know who the thing was, so he had to make all these different monsters. And so, he thought, okay, I'll do this stuff. And this is the era of puppets, where it's a lot of glue and goo and cables that make things move. There's 10 people running a monster, and then Dean Cundy says, "Oh, that's a good idea. Let's light it up." He thought he was going to be in the shadows. All of a sudden, everything was exposed, and there was all these effects. Like you burn up a special effect, you don't get to use it again. It's a one shot. So there was so many times that Bottin was really on the wire. He was the make it or break it guy for that movie, but he pulled it off.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the greatest things. But burn them out. You burn them out. The pressure was huge.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's the one thing you get involved with these big studios. They are on a schedule. That movie's going to be in that theater on October 12th or whatever it is, and it better be there.
Yeah.
There's no, like, buying any more time. And what do they do when you get into a crunch? They add more people.
Yep.
You just throw more people at it. So you kind of lose control at a certain point. just get it done. It's like factory time.
Yeah. Phantasm 2.
Phantasm 2, I was on again, special sound effects. My main thing was with that crazy silver ball thing with the spike on it.
Yeah.
Making that thing fly and twist and be evil. And I remember making a lot of the effects actually with my own voice. By then we had a thing called an emulator. I had an emulator 1. It had like a total of like 4 seconds of digital sampling. But I remember singing into that thing or making noises and things like stuff, and then speeding it up and slowing it down in the emulator and then putting it off of the tape. And actually, who was our director?
Don Coscarelli?
Don, right, yeah. I became buddies with him, and actually my brother-in-law, I ran to Don several times since then. But that was my first encounter with Don.
I saw him
Very interesting.
Yeah, I saw him at Son of Monsterpalooza last month. Great guy.
Yeah, great guy. Still doing his thing.
Yeah.
But it's such an interesting business that, you almost have to, like, make a movie, lay it out there, nobody pays attention to it. Years later, somebody finds out, that was a really good movie. I want to know who played that for. And now with the idea of on-demand, all these things find an audience that couldn't be presented through the theatrical thing. Because when you think about it, there's only 52 weekends.
Yeah.
There's only 52 weekends that all get divvied up amongst the big players. I'm sure that there's some meeting that takes place, or at least some chessboard kind of moves. Well, Disney's going to take this one, and Paramount's going to take this one, and Fox is going to take this one, and here comes Star Wars, so everybody get out of the way. Marketing people have to play all this stuff with releases.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, if you're not one of those people, you got to find some way to get out there.
Yeah.
The whole thing that's happened on the internet, Netflix and Hulu and whatever. I just finished a movie called Hoax, Hoax. You should check it out. Mm-hmm. It's on Hulu right now. Excellent movie, independent movie by Matt Allen. It's a Bigfoot horror movie. Really done well. But unless somebody tells you to go look for it, you won't know it. How do you find it?
Who's in it? I think I've heard of it.
Probably the one name is a guy, Ben Browder from the the zombie one. Huge on TV.
Walking Dead?
Walking Dead, yeah, he's from Walking Dead. And the rest of them are people you haven't heard before, but they're all cast really well for their parts. Oh, another is Brian Thompson's in it. He's my buddy. He used to be my neighbor up in La Cañada. He's plays sort of the Von Damme military character, the guy that eventually gets the guns and sets up the perimeter and protects the campsite.
Yeah, nice. I'll check it out.
Definitely check it out.
How about Total Recall?
Total Recall. So in this case, back to my original two guys, Steve Flick, Richard Anderson. Steve Flick was the sound effect editor designer at Total Recall, and he came to this. He was pretty much near the end of the thing, and there was just this one thing that he was just totally stumped on, which was this last scene when there's two things. One, I did the Mars taxi,
mm-hmm.
which we had a recording of an electric car, and we did a whole electric car. You're underground, so you can't have combustion engines. I remember doing that, and there were these giant fans that were in the Mars underground, and I made sounds for the big fans, which was literally just an antique ceiling fan that was slowed down, and I got making big fans out of little fans, and then the last couple of scenes where everything gets depressurized, and then there's this thing where Arnold's eyes pop out and his ears pop out, and the whole pressurization scene, and I wound up doing that for him. He was like, "Oh man, you saved my ass." I didn't know where that was going to come from, and it was all stuff that I made with recordings of air compressors at a gas station. Squirt those things and putting it at the time I had a thing called a synclavier, which was like one of the giant digital sampler keyboards, and with the synclavier system, I was able to stack and manipulate and make them all these pretty amazing effects that wound up in the show.
Nice. And finally, the dentist.
Oh, dentist. All right, so this is Brian
Usna.
Second, Brian Usna. Yeah. So I forget how I wanted to get introduced to Brian. I think it was through one of the sound effects editors, or one of the picture editors. I think it was through Chris Roth, actually. He was the picture editor on it. And so I got introduced to Brian and wound up doing the dentist. And I remember Brian sitting with me through a lot of the scoring. Again, I had a synclavier system. It was just like a one guy in a room. And the big thing was it was this opera element. Because the dentist, for his sort of his solace in his craziness, he would play opera, and he would do all these bad things to opera. And I remember hiring an opera singer, and this very attractive young woman comes over and set up a microphone literally right next to me. We were both on headphones, and there was a couple real operas to have her sing, and she went off, and I remember looking at her going, "What? That noise came out of you? This little person made this big operatic voice." It was like, because she had all the training of it. I was blown away. So I integrated her voice a lot into the score, as well as doing my usual, horror movie music stuff with it, integrating the opera and the regular horror movie. And it was successful enough that we went on to do Dennis the second one. We made a sequel because it did well. It did well. It was fun.
Yeah, that's probably my favorite Brian Usna movie, is The First Dentist.
Yeah, I still see him from time to time. He's another senior guy. He just had a birthday that I was invited to and stuff like that in Hollywood. And he was the original Reanimator guy. I mean, that established him. He was that kind of weird guy. Oh, and I first met Brian actually on a movie called Society.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was introduced to him as a sound effects person, making these weird, slimy stuff. There's a scene where, like, these people have they have orgies, but in the orgy they become, like, all hooked together and gooey, slimy orgy stuff. It was very weird, very strange. It was almost like, what? How did you think about that?
Yeah.
But he remembered me, and that's what it was. That's how I met Brian for the first time, as a sound effects guy. And then when it came time to do the dentist, he remembered me from my work with Carpenter, and he thought I thought out of the box. Right? He was going to get something different out of me, so that's what came by, which he did.
Yeah, he's taken the body horror to a new level, although I think that Cronenberg was always the best at body horror.
Yeah. I worked a little bit, what was it, on Cronenberg. I worked with the Howard Shore score on Videodrome.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but that was after the fact. I worked with his engineer on making the album for Videodrome. Interesting movie. I might have done some effects for that, too. That's how I met those guys. But it was interesting. As a sound effects editor, you're part of a team, but every now and then you get an opportunity to step up to the plate as the composer because of some editor that you worked with before that introduced to the director that one of the things is I never burn a bridge. I always do the best I can. I don't care if they give me $50 or $50,000. I still always do the best I can. Pretty much the only gauge is how much time you can put into it.
Yeah.
For $50, you can give a couple of days. For $50,000, you can give a half a year. It's like that's really the denominator of the formula for how much you get paid.
Yeah, which do you prefer more, creating music or sound?
Definitely being Mr. Score. One movie I did where I tried to be both, and it was too much. It was just too much. You can't. Your attention has to go one way or the other. Although on a lot of my scores, I do integrate sound effects as part of the score. So, one of the movies I did that. I was a movie called Retribution.
Oh, yeah.
And on that one, when you listen to the score, there's sound effects in the score. Just like sound effects guys, take a break. I'm gonna do the whole thing. So it's one time when I'm on both sides of the fence. But the scoring is more interesting, and just as a a pure career move, you write music, you get residuals. You do sound effects. It's like a paint job. You go in and paint the room, you leave.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a better career move in music. But it's so competitive now, and everyone is talented. And it used to be that there was a sort of an equipment barrier. You had to have a 24 track, tape recorders and big consoles and all the synthesizers. And now everybody's got a laptop, and you're dangerous. It's different. It's a different time.
Yeah, do you think that movie scores are now being replaced by, them getting the rights to, like, top 40 music?
There's definitely a thread of making popular music instead of scoring, and it can be successful or unsuccessful. I remember the first time that pop music got cut in as a score was on The Matrix.
Mm-hmm.
Where they took this Marilyn Manson stuff and stripped out the vocals and used these really great modern rock instrumental parts of it for the score, especially in that one scene where they're shooting up all those pillars and stuff like that. Fantastic. Excellent job. Editorial job. And then you got Trent Reznor's and these guys that jump in, the rock guys that jump in and do it. I remember Richard Gibbs from Boingo Boingo jumped in. He became a good scoring guy. So whether it's a rock guy that crosses over or they start licensing music, because now consider also the situation where you're a producer, director, you got to make your movie. Rather than the unknown of hiring someone to write something for you, you go through 50 songs and you go, I like that. This license is good enough for me. Done.
Mm-hmm.
All the risk is gone. And then you get to make a soundtrack album, and some movies live on as scores, but the movies are forgotten. It's just very strange.
Yeah. Have you written a score that you listen to and you go, that's my masterpiece?
The ones I did with Carpenter, Big Trouble in Little China is definitely it. Because that movie, by the nature of the movie, had all kinds of different kinds of music in it, mm-hmm. right? Because of the material, rock and roll and chase and Chinese music and wars and supernatural and all this stuff. So that as the movie content, and also it's interesting. That movie there was some screw ups in the special effects. So normally you get like 6 to 10 weeks to do a score, and we got like an extra month. So we got to score the whole movie top to bottom, and then go back and go through the whole thing and really fine tune everything. So the production value of that is very high too. So that's on for sort of the masterpiece. I'd say that was it. With Carpenter. On my own, a couple of albums about the Retribution was really good. Mm-hmm. Big Lost Empire was really good, and this movie I just did, Hoax. Interesting. Matt wanted me to do what I used to do in the '80s. He wanted an homage score, and he actually turned down all the stuff I showed him that was samplers from the laptop, and he wanted me to dust off the old Prophet 5 and give him an analog synthesizer score. So it was good to go back and just do what I already knew how to do. So that movie's got my greatest really, and that just came out in August.
Nice. How about a score that you listened to and you just absolutely cringe?
I don't know. So it'd be hard to pick one because I cringe and not putting my attention on it. The one that didn't work for me in the world of Halloween was Halloween 7. So the next one after I got off the boat. And they actually had problems themselves. They wound up, it was scored by Altman, and he did a good job, but they didn't like it. Then they went back to the guy who did Scream, and we cut cues in from that. It was just this hodgepodge. It's like when they lose direction.
Yeah.
That's when you go, guys, really? Are you kidding?
Must have been a lot of pressure.
Yeah, and then, a similar situation on Halloween 6 where you hear about the Phantom producer's cut. Mm-hmm. I had to score that movie twice. I scored it sort of in an authentic Halloween style, and then the Weinsteins got involved, and they wanted a pop up everything. They wanted to boost to supercharge the movie. And so I wound up scoring again and putting all kinds of guitars and drums and rock and roll, and both came out good. But once you lose control of the direction that of your art, and you're trying to become like and you are providing a service. When they really get into your stuff, it's like they're really wrecking it. Like, I feel well.
Yeah, because you got nothing to prove. I mean, go back and listen to all of your best work,
Yeah, exactly. And you talk about where does creativity come from? You just never know. Hence the poltergeist story. You're leaving some on the radio, or you're out cutting the lawn, or you're feeding the dog, and you open up for this field of ideas, and sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you kind of put the order out. I really need a good idea for this, and then like 3 days later, why did I think that's brilliant? Great. So it's just creativity on demand is not possible. I remember one of my original teachers back at UCLA, he says what he does is every time he has a great idea, he writes it down and it goes into a drawer. And so when he's put under pressure, he's got all these good ideas that he didn't know what it was for yet, but he's got a drawer to go to and pull them out and go, oh, well, that one will work here. So
yeah.
Because you are providing a service. You've been hired to do something. It's different than making an album where you're a band and you're doing your art. I mean, you are hired, but on the B side, being in the band business and living on beer and pretzels versus getting in the movie business and actually have a wife and kids and a house and cars and making payments. It's a totally different thing.
Yeah. Do you ever wish that you would have went solo and recorded your own albums?
Only when I was young.
So you're pretty happy with...
Yeah, I'm pleased. I'm very blessed. I've met a lot of people I've walked with. I've met a lot of the greatest people in the business and on the earth. And so that's my experience, is to learn from those people and realize that there's no difference between me and them.
Yeah.
Get to the top of the top. These are very real people. It's the weirdos are on the way up.
Yeah.
That don't have it, and they're trying to fake it or trying to grapple their way up or steal your ideas, and so because they don't know where it's coming from. So that's the weirdo bunch. But when you get in a room with a Lucas or a Jerry Goldsmith or a Spielberg, or I mean work with Michael Jackson, same kind of thing. Those are the real guys. Those are the best on earth.
Mm-hmm.
And really, they're not much different than us, except that a couple of breaks and then consistency. They stuck with it, As we see, some of them go off the rails on drugs or weird stuff, and they lose it and they're gone. And they're like a shooting star. You're James Deans and you're Marilyn Monroe's are the classics of people who've had everything, and then bye-bye.
Yeah, the best of the best.
They were never to get old. They were just young and gone. That's your Hendrix and your Morrison and your Joplins of the rock world, the shooting stars.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any upcoming projects you'd like to plug?
I have a score of a movie called Sons of the Cross, mm-hmm. which is an excellent sort of Da Vinci Code detective movie. They're still doing their casting. You're talking about Jeremy Renner right now. Mm-hmm. I'm on board for that as a score. And then I've also been into this whole other technology that I want you guys to check out. This is the third generation of virtual reality called mixed reality or spatial computing, working with a group called Magic Leap, like Leapfrog. New technology. It's holographic projection with goggles. So you put the glasses on or the goggles on. Mm-hmm. And you see holograms in the room with you. And it's like there's stuff in there. It's all projected visually. And it's in the space with you. It's not like VR where you kind of like put on the scuba mask and disappear and go to another place. You're still sitting in the room, and there's stuff in the room with you. It's amazing stuff. So I've been on board for the technology of all the spatial computing, of the sound for the holographic objects. And I'm working on a couple of projects for those guys. And then I've spent a lot of time going through it. I've got like another 15 scores that have never been released from all these movies you never heard from.
Huh.
So I'm putting I'm putting out work with a company called BSX, and so I just put out this. It was a double CD of a score to Evolution, Headless Horseman, and another movie calling Highway Hunter, which was a score I did for a movie that they threw out.
Mm-hmm.
It was fine, but it was just they changed direction, and I've made a list. I got a bunch more movies that have never been released. I did a couple for Asylum. I did a Hansel and Gretel. I did Ghouls and Freebirds and Arcade. Another one called Monsters I did a long time ago for Deborah Hill. So I'm sort of like cleaning up all these old scores and at least putting them out, because if I don't do it now and I'm gone, nobody will ever know they existed. So
yeah,
doing my own library, and then I also have a sound effects library. Another one I'm working on. I have like another 300 hours of sound effects that I recorded for all those movies. I've got several of them that are already published out there, and then I work with a company called Pro Sound Effects. I'm doing an Alan Howarth big sound effects library thing. So
nice. And are you active on the convention scene?
Yeah, actually, I'm going to be at Chiller this weekend.
Oh, you're going to be at Chiller. Oh, that's right. I think I saw it on the website.
Yeah, so that's fun. I enjoy doing that, and some of the times with these conventions, I get to play. I play live concerts. I'm like a featured act either on the Friday night or the Saturday night. And I'm now playing concerts, so I'm actually playing all this legacy music from the 80s in a live show. I have my laptop and my keyboard and my guitar, and I had a DJ named Jane Boyd out of Australia do me a version of the movie clips, but they're all VJs. It's not like watching a movie anymore. They're all distorted and tweaked and colorized and forwards and backwards. It's very artsy, and that's fun. So I'm playing live too.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I hope it's a good turnout for you. I just had Thomas Waits from The Thing on last week to promote his appearance at ChillerCon. And
we're having a thing, sort of a thing reunion with Waits and Wilbur. Dean Cundy was supposed to be there, but he got double committed. He won't be there. He's another buddy of mine from the old days.
Yeah.
But I'll be there. I don't know. Are you going to bother this get on the air before the show, or this will be after the show, probably?
I know this will air later.
Yeah. Right, so anyhow, anybody who missed me, you missed me. I'll be there.
Well, if next time you're in California for a convention and stuff, I'll be there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. I've done Monster Palooza and Monster Mania and Horror Hound and stuff like that convention. It's great. I really enjoy it because I get to meet all the people, and share with all the young filmmakers, and let them know it's just not that much distance between them standing there and them doing something that's real.
Mm-hmm.
The main thing to do is just get started. Just stop talking about it. Stop thinking about it. Just do it.
Just do it.
Anyway.
That's my philosophy, too. Don't talk about it. Just do it.
Just do it. If it comes out shitty, you'll do it again. If it comes out great, you got it done.
Yeah, don't be afraid to fail.
Exactly. We learn by our mistakes. I mean, I remember when my kids were in kindergarten and we were learning about the stuff, and they said, "Look, this is how you learn: is two steps forward, one step back. 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and eventually you get where you need to go." That's life.
Mm-hmm. Well said, Alan. Thank you so much for coming on today, and I hope ChillerCon is a huge turnout for you next week, like I said, and I'll keep an eye out for some of the other films you have coming out. I'll look for Hoax, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. Everybody check out Hoax. I know it's on Hulu and it's probably in streaming and all kinds of other stuff. It's kind of a sleeper, but great first-time filmmaker. He did a super job. Just a super job.
Great. Well, Alan, you have yourself a great night.
All right. Thanks for sharing.
My pleasure.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, there you have it. Alan Howarth. Ain't he a cool dude? He sure is. Great stories about music. Great stories about the business. Very smart, knowledgeable man. And I hope his appearance at ChillerCon this weekend, October 25th through 27th, is a huge turnout for him. If you like this video, everyone, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Add me as a friend on Facebook. Join my Tommy Kovac comedian page on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram and all that fun stuff. Well, that's all the time we have this week on Splat from the Past. Until next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying, There's no shame in living in the past, because the present sucks. Later, dudes.